The room was quiet except for the ticking of an old wall clock. Sunlight filtered through the half-closed blinds of the attorney's office, casting soft shadows across the polished oak table. I sat there with my mother, my younger brother, and a few distant relatives, none of us really speaking, just waiting. It had been 2 weeks since we buried my father, and we were all still trying to accept the reality that he was gone. Mr. Ellis, my father's longtime lawyer, cleared his throat and began to read the will. Most of it was predictable. He left the house to my mother, some money to my brother, and a few cherished heirlooms to his closest friends and family. But then, Mr. Ellis paused. "There is one more item," he said, reaching for a thick, sealed envelope. "This is addressed to you, personally," he said, sliding it toward me. My hands were trembling slightly as I took it. The envelope was cream-colored and had my name written in my father's unmistakable handwriting. Strong, neat, with a little curve at the ends of the letters. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The message was short, but each word felt heavy. "My dear child, if you are reading this, I am no longer with you, but there is something you must know, something I could never bring myself to say. Go to my study. In the bottom drawer of my desk you will find a key. Use it to unlock the safe hidden behind the bookshelf. What you find inside will change everything." I stared at the letter, my mind racing. What could he have kept hidden all these years? What was so important that he left it for me to discover only after his death? That moment marked the beginning of a journey I never expected. A path that would uncover secrets buried deeper than I ever imagined. The house felt different without him. Colder, quieter. Every corner held traces of my father's presence. His scent still lingered in his favorite chair, and the sound of his footsteps seemed to echo faintly in the hallway. But now, I was walking through it with new eyes, searching not for comfort, but for answers. I stepped into his study, a room he always kept private. It was neatly organized, just as he had left it. His large mahogany desk stood against the wall beneath the window, papers stacked in perfect order, his favorite fountain pen still resting in its holder. I pulled open the bottom drawer, just as he had instructed. It groaned slightly from years of use, and there it was. A small brass key, dull from age but unmistakably important. My heart was pounding as I picked it up, its weight suddenly symbolic. What was I about to uncover? I turned toward the bookshelf. It had always seemed permanent, built into the wall. But when I examined the side, I noticed faint scuff marks on the floor, evidence that it had been moved before. I pressed my shoulder against it and gave a firm push. Slowly the shelf creaked open, revealing a narrow recess in the wall, and there, embedded in the concrete, was a small safe. I inserted the key and turned it. A soft click echoed in the silence. The door creaked open. Inside was a bundle of items, wrapped carefully in a cloth. I gently unwrapped them one by one. There were old photographs, some black and white, others faded by time. A few showed my father with a woman I didn't recognize. In others, he was holding a baby. Alongside the photos were letters, dozens of them, each one neatly folded and dated, addressed to someone named Amelia. There were also legal documents, adoption records, hospital forms, a birth certificate. The name at the top made my heart stop. Amelia Rose Whitaker. Born 1981. Father, Edward Whitaker. Mother, Rachel Hayes. I couldn't breathe. My father had another child, a daughter, a life before us that he never spoke about. I sat back on the floor, surrounded by pieces of a past I never knew existed. The weight of it all came crashing down at once. My father had carried this secret for decades, and now, through this hidden safe, he had passed it on to me. But why had he kept it a secret? What happened to Amelia. And what was I supposed to do with this truth now that it was mine? I couldn't sleep that night. My mind kept spinning, replaying every moment from the study. Every photo, every letter, every word written in my father's familiar handwriting. Amelia. Her name echoed in my thoughts like a haunting melody. Who was she? Where was she now? And why had my father hidden her from us for so long? The next morning, I sat down with a cup of black coffee and began carefully reading each letter. They told a story that was both beautiful and heartbreaking. Years before he met my mother, my father had been in love with a woman named Rachel. They were young and full of dreams, and when Amelia was born, he described it as the happiest day of his life. But joy soon turned to tragedy. Rachel died suddenly from complications just weeks after childbirth. Overwhelmed by grief and unable to raise a child alone, my father made the agonizing decision to place Amelia for adoption, hoping she would have a better life than he could give at the time. What struck me most was how much he never stopped thinking about her. The letters spanned years. He wrote to her on every birthday, every Christmas, and on days when he simply missed her. Though many of the letters were never sent, they revealed a man who carried the weight of regret like a shadow. Some of them were even stamped and addressed, but never mailed. It was like he had wanted to reach out, but something always held him back. I sat there for hours, overwhelmed with a strange mix of sorrow, awe, and curiosity. My father, this man I thought I knew so well, had lived with a broken heart, silently carrying the memory of a daughter he had lost, and he had never told any of us. I felt betrayed and yet deeply moved. He wasn't just a father, he was a man who had endured a pain I had never imagined. I looked again at the adoption papers. There was an agency name and a city. I suddenly felt a spark of determination rise inside me. I needed to find her, not just for myself, but for him. He had left me this story, this secret, because he believed I could do what he never had the courage to do: find Amelia. I wasn't sure where to start. The adoption papers were decades old, and many of the contact numbers or addresses no longer existed. Still, I felt driven, like my father's voice was guiding me, urging me forward. I began by calling the adoption agency listed in the documents. The woman on the line was polite, but cautious. Due to privacy laws, she couldn't reveal much unless I had legal permission or a court order. But when I mentioned my father's name and the exact date of adoption, there was a pause. She finally said, "I can't confirm anything officially, but I suggest you look in the county of Brighton. That's where the adoptive family lived at the time." It wasn't much, but it was a start. I spent the next few days buried in online archives and newspaper databases, searching for any mention of an Amelia Rose Whittaker. I scoured old high school yearbooks, community newsletters, and even social media platforms, cross-referencing birth years and locations. It felt like chasing shadows. Until I found a wedding announcement from 10 years ago. The bride's name, Amelia Rose Bennett, née Whittaker. The photo showed a woman in her early 30s with soft brown hair and eyes that looked strangely familiar. My heart skipped. The article listed the town where she had been living at the time, a small coastal village called Marlow Bay. The next morning I packed a small bag and drove out to the seaside town. It was quiet, peaceful, the kind of place where everyone seemed to know everyone. I stopped at a local cafe and nervously asked if they knew a woman named Amelia Bennett. The barista smiled and said, "Sure, she works at the flower shop just down the street." Just like that, I found her. I stood outside the shop for what felt like forever. Through the window I saw her arranging a bouquet of sunflowers, her movements calm and graceful. She looked happy, normal, like someone who had no idea her entire world was about to shift. I finally gathered the courage to walk in. A bell above the door jingled. She looked up and smiled politely. "Hi there, How can I help you? My throat tightened. I tried to speak, but faltered. I think we might be related, I said quietly. My name is Alex Whitaker. My father was Edward Whitaker. Her smile faded. Her expression changed. Not fear, not anger, just quiet confusion. She set the flowers down slowly. I've heard that name before, she whispered. And just like that, the wall between our worlds began to crack. The silence between us was thick with emotion. Amelia stood there, still as stone, trying to process what I had just said. I could see the questions flooding her mind, the same ones that had haunted me since I opened that hidden safe. We sat together in the back room of the flower shop, surrounded by the gentle scent of lavender and roses. I handed her copies of the letters our father had written, his words, his longing, his guilt. Her fingers trembled as she turned each page. Tears welled in her eyes, and I saw something in her face shift, not just sadness, but recognition. She had always wondered, she admitted. Her adoptive parents had told her she was adopted, but they had little information to give. Her whole life she had felt a quiet emptiness, an unanswered question at the center of her heart, and now suddenly she had part of the answer. We talked for hours that day, about our lives, our childhoods, the paths we had taken. We discovered strange little similarities, our love for classical music, the way we both stirred our coffee clockwise, our shared fear of deep water. It was surreal, but it was also beautiful. In the weeks that followed, we met often. Sometimes we laughed until we cried. Other times, we just cried. Rebuilding the bridge our father never crossed was not easy, but we were both willing. We were both grieving him in our own way, and somehow finding each other helped fill the space he left behind. Eventually, I brought Amelia to our family home. My mother welcomed her with quiet grace, surprised, of course, but kind. My brother took longer to accept it, but even he couldn't deny that Amelia belonged, not just in our father's story, but in ours. One evening as we stood by our father's grave, Amelia placed a sunflower, her favorite, next to the headstone. She whispered, "I wish you told me yourself, but thank you for giving me." I stood beside her, heart full. Our father's secret had once shattered my understanding of who he was, but now I saw it differently. He hadn't just left us a mystery, he had given us a chance to reconnect what was broken. That chapter of our family story had been hidden, but it was never lost. Now it was being rewritten. One honest conversation, one shared memory, one new beginning at a time. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more emotional, real-life family mysteries just like this one. Hit the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when we release the next part of this story, or when new stories drop. Every like and subscription helps us continue sharing powerful, heartfelt stories that might just reflect something in your own life. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more unexpected twists, hidden secrets, and moving family journeys. You won't want to miss what's coming next.